there's one question no one is answering. What happens after the Great Resignation?
In August, more than 4 million workers quit their jobs.
Millions of jobs unfilled.
We've been working from home for
the Great Resignation.
The Great Resignation.
Great Resignation.
Great Resignation.
Great Resignation.
To leave their jobs.
So many workers have left.
And at the Great Resignation.
The Great Resignation.
Why everyone is quitting now.
People here in the United States and all over the globe quit their jobs en masse, drastically shifting the power from employer to employee. But how long will this dynamic last? Will this lead to a new golden age for workers, or will a completely new movement that's spreading across China, undermining its economic growth, and something their government is so scared of that it's currently censoring? Will that movement start to creep here? I went all the way to the front page of the internet, Reddit, to see what people think will happen, and the results are honestly quite shocking. Hopefully the apocalypse. The Great Resignation was in preparation for the Great Acceleration, and then the Great Collapse, and the Great Extinction. Or in summary, I think we're all f***ed. But before we explore the two very different scenarios that can happen after the Great Resignation, we need to first understand what really started it. I'm sure you've seen the news. Millions of people across the world have been leaving their jobs because of 3 key reasons. Wait, are we using footage from Ice Age? Come on. People like you are quitting your jobs because you've been constantly stressed, overworked, and you're finally waking up to the fact that you deserve better. You're tired of dealing with terrible bosses, unreasonable deadlines, and stagnating pay. So you and your friends decide to make one of the scariest decisions in your lives and quit. I made that decision in late 2020 because I realized I felt like I wasn't really doing or contributing anything at work. I wasn't making people's lives better, I was just making the rich richer. And I knew that I could be a much more positive influence on the world by using my background in economics and finance to help people like you, to teach you what I know about money so together we can close the widening wealth gap and reach financial freedom. Oh, and it didn't help that at my old job, I felt like I was losing control of my life. In the finance industry, the hours are horrendous, 12 to 14-hour workdays, and although the pay was good, I always had to ask myself, is this worth it? To exchange all my time, sometimes until midnight, sometimes on the weekends, the time that you spend to live, be with your friends and your family, was all that worth it in exchange for a nice paycheck every 2 weeks? It wasn't for me, so I joined the Great Resignation. And since then, my mission has been to share everything I know about finance in a fun and easy way, because despite how fundamentally important it is in our world, public schools decided that teaching you that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell is way more important than learning about money and investing. Look, I never learned about personal finance in school or even at home. My parents are immigrants, blue-collar workers who didn't speak any English, and so we didn't grow up with a lot of money, and finances was just a really taboo topic. Actually, the only time money really came into the conversation was when I wanted to buy a toy and my parents said no because we couldn't afford it. So that's where this channel comes in, to help educate you about personal finances, to help you achieve financial freedom. So make sure you turn that like button into a beautiful black so you can see more of my videos onto your homepage. Okay, there are many different scenarios that can play out after the Great Resignation, but here are 2 very different ones. And it's the second scenario that China is currently undergoing and is making the Chinese government very, very nervous. Social analysts, economic professors, and politicians all mostly agree that the Great Resignation will bring positive changes for employees, leading to happier, healthier, and more empowered workers. However, despite all the positive words in support for this movement, there are certain people who have smeared it.
What do you think of millennials? Coddled, entitled?
Yes, I think so.
Really?
I do.
They're painting the idea that the Great Resignation is just a bunch of whiny millennials refusing to work and instead choose to sit at home, watch Netflix, and eat cheeseburgers all day long. Now, I'm positive there are some people doing this, but this movement also unleashed a historic burst in entrepreneurship and new businesses, the cornerstones of the United States economy. The number of unincorporated self-employed workers rose by 500,000 since the start of the illness, which is the highest total since the financial crisis in 2008. And millions of others are refocusing their careers and switching to jobs or industries that they're genuinely passionate about, which should increase overall productivity throughout the country. But this mass exodus isn't going to last forever. Experts believe that in the coming years, the number of people quitting their jobs will decrease and eventually go back to normal because of 3 key reasons. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we could be living through a new golden age for workers. The last golden age we've seen was over 70 years ago, in the 1950s, when the US economy was humming. It was after World War II when the US entered a period of strong growth throughout the economy, labor productivity, and low unemployment. During this time, pay and benefits for more than 3/4 of the nation's labor force surged by 90%, allowing certain specific individuals with no formal education be able to buy a house, a car, send their kids to college, and enjoy an occasional vacation every now and then. But since then, we haven't seen any drastic revolutions in the workplace. Until now. The rush to reopen the economy and replace workers who had quit created a very rare opportunity for more dollar bills because of the simple laws of supply and demand. Low supply of workers combined with high demand for them gives existing workers and job switchers more bargaining power. The data shows that workers who stayed in their jobs got a 4.8% raise, which sounds really impressive, but come on, it doesn't even keep up with the pace of inflation, but whatever. On the other hand, job switchers saw a 6.6% raise. And this trend is expected to continue into 2022. In fact, companies are setting aside 3.9% of their payroll budget for raises, which is the sharpest increase since 2008. However, the Great Resignation isn't only about giving workers new monetary opportunities. It's also about living a more balanced life. Remote workers will become the norm, and many tech companies, like Google, are giving their employees the option to work from home or at the office. And this means that you don't need to live in a super high cost of living city with pollution, traffic, and noise to have a high salary. As of now, Spotify and Reddit pledge to keep their employee salaries the same no matter where they're located. And this is a bigger deal than it sounds. The average cost of a 3-bedroom household in a state like New York or California is around $650,000, which is ridiculous. And it only gets worse the closer you get to their major cities. But what if you could keep your current salary and move to a place with a lower cost of living? And on the flip side, that also means that if you live in rural Idaho, you have the opportunity to get paid like a high-paying San Francisco tech job salary, while still being able to enjoy fresh Idaho potatoes every morning for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Which, fun fact, did you know that potatoes are actually vegetables? Mind blown. Now I don't feel too guilty shoveling fries down my gullet. Comment below what's your favorite fry style? Mine are the thin ones from McDonald's. But wait, there's more. Higher pay and remote work aren't even the coolest benefits coming. There's something else that's cooler than a cucumber. There's a new movement gaining traction across Europe. A pilot program has been launched in the UK, where 30 companies are currently testing it out, and other countries like New Zealand and Spain are also implementing similar trials. It's still in the very early stages, and we won't know anything definitive until a few years later when the data is collected and analyzed. And the movement is known as the 4-day work week. And the world is waiting to see how it affects productivity and employee satisfaction. But the biggest change of all cannot be easily reflected through numbers and charts, and it's simply improvements in mental health. Imagine how much healthier you could be mentally and physically if you had a higher pay, you could work fewer hours, and you had the flexibility to work anywhere in the world. Now, all this workers' golden age utopian lifestyle in the United States sounds absolutely amazing, but sorry to burst your bubble. Remember, this is only if we don't head down the second scenario that's disrupting China's economic growth, and the government is trying to actively shut it down as we speak.
Do I want to sacrifice my health?
997. Why work so hard?
Lying flat.
Lying flat.
Lying flat.
Lying flat.
The lie flat revolution.
Remember our friendly Reddit comment who so eloquently put it? I think we're all These 5 words perfectly summarize how a certain portion of the population currently feels about what could be coming next. And it indicates that not everyone is looking for better jobs or better opportunities. And if we're not careful, then this could spread fast in the United States. This is called lying flat. It's a movement or an idea spreading throughout China to the extent that it's scaring the Chinese government because of one reason. China's leaders view the strength of its economic future based on innovation, and it has pledged to end its reliance on imported technologies and instead focus on domestic consumption. And so this aggressive economic blueprint has pressured its people for years to study really hard, get into a good college, find a good job, and climb the corporate ladder to reach success, all in an attempt to pursue more productivity and to keep China's economic growth engine running. But let's pause here, because you might be thinking that's every country. Every country wants their economy to grow, to be more productive, even in the United States. And you're right, except for one major difference. But first, I do want to clarify that the people in China and the Chinese government are completely separate things. China is not the CCP. Okay, so the one major difference can be defined by 3 numbers: 955. 955 essentially describes the work culture in the US and Europe, meaning working from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 days a week. And of course, that's not every industry, finance, but generally that's the norm. However, In China, their culture can be summarized with two different numbers: 9, 9, 6. So if you're working in China, your typical work schedule is waking up early in the morning, checking in at 9 a.m. and working until 9 p.m. for 6 days a week, every week for 52 weeks in a year, and however many years you live. And Chinese millennials have been living through this nightmare for a long time, pressured by friends, family, and country. And some of them are starting to fight back now by simply lying flat.
What is this?
The lying flat movement calls on young workers and professionals, the engine of China's economic blueprint, to just opt out of the struggle for workplace success and to reject the promise of consumer fulfillment. And you can see that this is a massive threat to the Chinese government because China needs its youth to be enthusiastic and active in the economy. And this movement spits right at the face of the government's plans. But this wasn't the first time the youth of China expressed dissatisfaction with their economic situation.
Time for them to enter into the mental state of Guabi, sleeping and answering the call of nature on the street, eating one meal a day until you find another daily paid job, and then repeat everything all over again.
Before the lying flat movement started, there was another popular philosophy called Sanhei gods, which may foreshadow what's happening right now in the United States because we're starting to see some signs of it here. The Sanhei gods philosophy is you could work for a single day and you would make enough money to have 3 days of fun. And so those who practiced this became super frugal and minimalist and would just hang out at internet cafes, eat really cheap food like instant ramen all the time, and they flat out rejected romantic partners, children, homes, and societal expectations to minimize their expenses and just live a life of fun. And we might be starting to see that in the United States. Some millennials and Gen Z are contending with the same dissatisfaction from the insecurities of a diminishing economy.
Millennials, who are they? What do they want?
Millennials across the board have opted to have fewer children than previous generations, and one of the top reasons is to avoid the financial burden of having a child. Statistics show that 58% of older millennials born between 1982 and 1986 chose to have children, but that number is only 27% with the younger millennials, and that rate has no sign of slowing down. In fact, US birth rates have been declining over the years, and in 2020 has fallen to its lowest point ever. Today's American millennials, just like the Sanhei gods, have fewer interest in romantic partners than previous generations. Back in the 1960s, 59% of adults were married before the age of 30. Nowadays, that number is around 20%. And for better or worse, people are more interested in living a more happy and fun life than just being miserable at work. Now, whether the US will follow the trends in China where they witness the Sanhei gods first and then the lying flat movement next, no one knows if this will come here. However, I will say that our work-life balance isn't as bad as it was over there. But that doesn't mean that there's absolutely zero chance of it happening. Regardless of which path the US heads in after the Great Resignation, whether the future is bright, brimming with a new golden age of opportunities, or dark with severe economic stagnation, there is one undeniable fact, and it's the importance of financial education and being prepared regardless of which scenario plays out. And the best way to prepare yourself is with this video, where I teach you the easiest way to manage your money, and I even reveal for the very first time what I personally do with mine.